Hi, Clark Van Deventer here from Major Gifts Fundraiser. I'm excited that you're here for my training on 5 keys to unlocking major gifts. All right, I've spent my whole career raising money for nonprofits and coaching development staff on how to have deeper and more meaningful, and yes, ultimately, more profitable relationships with their donors. I've presented hundreds of hours of training to fundraising staff and executive staff and volunteers and board members. Organizations have paid me thousands of dollars to come give fundraising talks to their staff. And then 6 months later, they've paid me thousands of dollars again to come back, sometimes to say the very same thing I said 6 months ago. Why? Like, did they not hear me the first time? No, they did hear me. And they adopted the principles I share here. They began using the 5 keys, and they found the keys work. They used these keys and they closed big gifts. They raised more money. What I shared rang true. It felt true because it rang true, because it felt true. They were willing to implement it. When they implemented it, they found that it worked. But they'd have me back because it was like they needed a shot in the arm. They needed to be reminded, right? Sometimes we need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed. All right. So these are the 5 keys you need to unlock major gifts. If you will use these keys, you will begin to raise more money. And I hope that you will watch or listen to this training over and over and over again, or take advantage of the other programs that we offer at Major Gifts Fundraiser. In this training, I want to bring you back to what you already knew intuitively and maybe forgotten, or maybe you doubted, or maybe you'd been told you needed to do it another way. But I think that as we go through this training, you'll find yourself saying at times like, yes, I knew that, right? So sure, there's probably going to be times that you say, I never knew that, or wow, I'm glad I knew that now. I need to remember that. And I hope that you'll take the MP3 of this training and put it on your phone so that you can listen to it when you're driving or working out. All right, again and again and again, repetition. That's been so helpful to me in my career, going back and listening and re-listening again and again to good ideas. All right. So I want to jump right into this. What are the 5 keys to unlocking major gifts? Number 1, it's gratitude, real gratitude. It's being thankful for the people who partner with you to help you accomplish your mission. In this section, I'm going to talk a lot about the heart. All right. I'm going to talk about creating a feeling that people get when they interact with your organization. And I want to talk about creating your own organizational experience. With this first key, I'm going to refer often to a fabulous book I recommend called The Starbucks Experience. When I was the deputy director of the historic home of Ronald Reagan, I rewrote this for our staff and called it the Reagan Ranch Experience. I want to get you thinking about how to create your own experience. So if you're the Natural History Museum, I want you to think about how you create the Natural History Museum experience. If you're World Crisis Relief, I want you to think about how you create the World Crisis Relief experience. The goal here is to create an experience with your organization that makes the interactions your donors have with other nonprofits they support just seem dull in comparison. You want to be different. Think about the best feeling you've ever gotten from a business that you've interacted with. You may say, I can't quite put my finger on it. You know, your donors may say that about you. They may say, I can't quite put my finger on it, but they're different. All right. That's the first key. Gratitude, real gratitude, your heart, creating an organizational experience that separates you from the rest. Okay, the second key to unlocking major gifts is that you have to be selfish towards your own goals. You have to know what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. All right, so first set the right goals. All right, the right goals. You want to change the world. You want to accomplish your mission. The key is about having razor sharp focus on your goals. Okay, so the first key is gratitude. It starts with the heart. You are truly thankful to everyone who is giving to you, to everyone who is partnering with you to help you accomplish your important mission, but you are focused on your goals. You are selfish toward your goals. All right. You are going to be serious about this. And so while you may love all your donors, this is business, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to your organization to spend the majority of your time with the donors most likely, most capable, and most inclined to give you the big gifts that are going to propel your organization forward to help you accomplish your important mission. So this key is about ranking your list and prioritizing your donors and spending the majority of your time with your best prospects. It's being selfish toward your goals. All right. The third key is listening to gift and asking strategic questions. If you're ever going to get a gift above and beyond what the donor has ever given before, it's not going to be because the donor is giving to help you accomplish your dream. They're going to give to accomplish their dream. So you've got to ask questions that get the donor talking about what they'd want to accomplish if they were ever to give a gift above and beyond anything they've ever given before. All right? The next key, the fourth key, is making the ask and closing the gift. And I want to emphasize that second part, closing. All right? I have a lot of fundraisers tell me that they're not afraid to ask. And they say it with some pride, right? Like, I'm not afraid to ask, and their chest puffs up a bit, and they want me to tell them how great they are. And hey, they are great, all right? A lot of people will never ask. It takes courage to ask, and there are a lot of fundraisers out there who will never ask for gifts, all right? And one of the 5 keys to unlocking major gifts is asking. You've got to ask, but asking isn't enough, right? Like, what's the point of asking if you don't close? All right. So you have to know how to close gifts. Your goal should be that you close 3 out of 4 gifts that you ask for. And I'm going to talk with you about how to make the ask and then how to close the gift. All right. And then finally, the 5th key is mental mastery. It's about discipline and planning your way to long-term sustained success. Like, here's the thing. If you use the first 4 keys, your career, seriously, it can take off like a rocket ship. All right. You're going to be the rock star in your office. All right. Like, you've used that second key about being selfish towards your goals, and man, like, look at you go. But the second key, being selfish towards your goals, it eventually stops working without this key of mental mastery. The key of mental mastery keeps you focused on long-term goals, keeping a healthy donor pipeline, and planning your way to success long-term, sustained long-term success. The 5th key is about sustained long-term success, not flash in the pan success with major gifts. All right, so those are the 5 keys: creating your organizational experience, being selfish towards your goals, listening to gift and asking strategic questions, making the ask and closing the gift, and then mental mastery, discipline, planning your way to long-term success. Okay, now let's talk about that first key a little more in depth. What do I mean when I talk about creating your own organizational experience? What does it mean to give someone a fabulous giving experience? Okay, here's your goal. Your donors should get more joy out of giving to you than they could get out of anything else they could do with their money. All right. Let me say that again with a strong clarification at the end. Okay. Your donors should get more joy out of giving to you than anything else they could do with their money, charitable or otherwise. All right. Obviously, your donors should get more joy out of giving to you than they could get out of giving to any other organization, right? Like, there's no other organization out there when it comes to thanking your donors. No other organization ought to out-thank you, all right? But I take it a step further, and I say that your donors should get more joy out of giving to you than they could get out of anything else they could do with their money, charitable or otherwise. Like, There's nothing else your donors could do with their money. There's no consumer product that they could buy that would give them more joy than giving to you. All right? Think about what you have to offer. Your offer is an opportunity to change the world. All right? Whatever it is your organization does. So you're changing lives, saving the planet, building a better future. That's what you have to offer. Changing lives and saving lives. And when you think about it that way, like for me, it's not a big leap to think that what we as fundraisers have to offer our donors is like not just totally off the charts amazing. All right. You offer an opportunity to link your donors with that feeling, that experience, that satisfaction, that joy. And I'm always saying this. I'm always telling my clients our goal should be that our donors would get more joy out of giving to us than they could get out of anything else they could do with their money. Like seriously, come on, like what could you do with your money that would bring you more joy than changing the world? All right. If you've listened to our Donor Secrets Revealed audio program, you heard Jake talk about this. Jake talks about how giving is a spiritual experience for him. I don't think he talks about his boat that way or his kitchen remodel. All right. I had a donor I worked with many years ago. Her name was Evelyn Peterson, just a remarkable woman. All right. Special lady. Mrs. Peterson had given the first big gift to help us launch our campaign to build a visitor center in downtown Santa Barbara for the Reagan Ranch. It was an important gift, the gift we needed to close before we had the confidence to move forward with the project. It was also the last big gift of her lifetime. She continued to give annual gifts, sustaining gifts, and we were in her will, but that was the last big gift of her lifetime. But whenever I went to San Diego, I'd always stay with Mrs. Peterson, and I got to know her quite well. One day we're sitting and talking. The visitor center is now under construction. We're sitting in her home in La Jolla. Her home, when it was built, was the cutting edge architecture and design of its time. But that had been a lot of years, and I'm sure that when Mrs. Peterson, when she passed, that whoever bought her home probably pretty much leveled it and started over. Anyway, on this day, we're talking about the center and how exciting it will be to finally have it completed. Then she tells me that she planned to use the money she gave us for the visitor center to build a new house, to completely renovate her home. And then she said, but I decided instead of doing that, I wanted to build something for the future of America. All right, by this point, like tears are coming down her cheeks. And she says to me, and the day I gave that gift was the happiest day of my life. And I mean, like tears are coming down my cheeks at this point. I mean, here's this woman. She's lived a remarkable life, Women's Army Corps officer in World War II, marries a good man. They built a great life together, have children, grandchildren. And she tells me the day she gave us a gift was the happiest day of our life. All right, like that's what we have to offer. That's the feeling we want to deliver. Our donors should get more joy out of giving to us than anything else they could do with their money. Anything. All right, so how do we do it? How do we do it? All right, I have a book I want to recommend to you. Okay, it's called The Starbucks Experience by Joseph McKelly. All right, so sitting here today or standing here today, it's hard for us to remember just how much Starbucks revolutionized the coffee business. All right, 30 years ago, pretty much everyone was happy with 25-cent coffee from 7-Eleven. All right, so Monica, our CEO here at Major Gifts Fundraiser, tells this story from when she spent a summer in Europe during her college years. So this is like 20 years ago. And she's in Paris and she's talking on the phone. She's in Paris talking on the phone to her parents in California, all right, in Santa Barbara, which is a pretty progressive town, like This is a community that adapts new cultural trends like pretty early on in the process. And her parents want to know what Paris is like. And she tells them that there's all these cafes and that people go to these cafes and just drink coffee. And her parents are dumbfounded, like just dumbfounded that there can be places where people go just to drink coffee, like in the middle of the day. Okay. Like, how do these places survive, right? Like, well, there's like 30,000 Starbucks locations worldwide now. So like the idea kind of caught on, right? In fact, we've become such coffee snobs that many of us like now look down our noses at Starbucks. Like, that's how much Starbucks changed the coffee business. So how did they do it? All right. So at Starbucks, every employee is given the Green Apron book, a guide for creating fabulous customer experiences. And in that guide, they have the 5 ways of being. All right. Be welcoming, be genuine, be considerate, be knowledgeable, and be involved. All right. So let's look at these and consider what they look like in your organization so that you can take the Starbucks experience and remake it into your own organizational experience. All right. So first, be welcoming. Like, what are your interactions with your donors or any visitor to your organization like? Do you view it as a distraction? Like, it's a distraction from real work? Or are you welcoming? You know, are you genuine? Like, I'm sorry if you feel like I'm going all like lovey-dovey on you, but really this goes back to who we are and focusing less on what we do and more on who we are. Like, are we really genuine? Are we genuinely grateful to anyone who supports us? I think that sometimes nonprofits fall into this really destructive thinking. Like, what you're doing is so great, and darn it, they have the money and they should give it. Like, why don't they give it? But by being considerate, we realize that a donor isn't going to give for our reasons. They're going to give for their reasons. And that while we may think our organization is awesome and effective and doing good work, the donor will decide whether or not that's true and whether or not we're worthy of their support, not on the basis of facts or a logical case for support, but based upon your relationship. All right. So there's a quote in the Starbucks experience from a barista named Susan. All right. So Susan is a barista in Ohio. All right. So let me read this to you. She says, "We get many people who come into my Starbucks store to browse our merchandise. I love selling coffee machines because I know I can get behind our product. I've learned everything I can about our machines, and I pair people up with the right one." Okay. So now I have to just stop here for a second. Okay. Notice how she calls it her Starbucks. There's ownership there. She says she loves selling, and she loves her company. She feels like she can really get behind her product. Just like you ought to love your organization and feel like you are really behind your work. All right. And if you can't, like, we've got bigger problems, right? Like that's a whole nother discussion. All right. Okay. And Susan has learned everything she can about her machines, and she pairs people up with the right ones. All right. So she's learned everything she can about their machines. In your world, all right, in your world, being knowledgeable means knowing everything you can about your programs, your work, your mission, the difference you are making in people's lives. Within your niche, whatever organization you work for, there's a whole list of other nonprofits that your donors likely give to, right? Like, not in every case, and random ones are going to come up, but there's a few that a lot of your donors give to, right? Like, you've noticed this, right? So you should know everything you can about those organizations. You should know their budget, the campaign they're promoting right now, their staff. You should know the names of the development officers likely to call on them from those organizations. You should be knowledgeable about philanthropy in general. What are the different vehicles donors can use to give? Of course, they can write a check, but you should know about how to receive appreciated stock, or how donors have given real estate, or from their IRA, current tax laws and tax advantages. All right. You should be knowledgeable so that your donors view you as a professional, not the nice young man and the nice young woman who comes by to thank them for their support. Okay. So back to Susan in the Starbucks experience again. She says, I pair people up with the right one. She goes on, I use the connect, discover, respond model. I typically ask, are you brewing it for yourself? Because then a French press might be great. If you need to brew 12 cups at once, then we've got our Starbucks Barista Aroma Grande. See? So she's not working from a script, right? Like every customer is unique. It's not like she has the same thing she says to every customer. She asks questions. All right. So just like every donor is unique and is going to respond to different things, right? So, and then she adds, I love this. And then she adds, it's amazing how appreciative people are when you help them get their needs met. Like, that's awesome. Okay. First of all, she makes the sell. All right. She hasn't met anyone's needs until she makes the sell. Okay. But there will come a day when you ask a donor for $1 million gift, and they will thank you for it. Okay. And then be involved. That's the fifth way of being in the Green Apron book. Be involved in the lives of your donors. Know what's going on. Know what their kids are up to. What's going on in their business. So the former CEO of Starbucks, Jim Donald, he once said, we can't let the coffee down day in and day out. We have to consistently execute on the details. I'd say you can't let your cause down. Day in and day out, you have to consistently execute on the details. So do the basics well. All your donors should be receiving a minimum acceptable threshold of thanks for their gifts. Gift receipts should be sent out in a timely manner. Like, this is basic stuff, right? And at Major Gifts Fundraiser, we have a tool you can use to measure how well you're doing at the Stewardship Basics. We call it the Stewardship Basics Scorecard. All right. This basic stuff, acknowledging gifts, sending gift receipts, simple thank yous. This is your ante, right? In poker, before you can even play the game, right, you have to pay your ante. All right. So if you're not doing this stuff, if you're not doing some of these basics, you're not even paying your ante. You're not even in the game. All right. When it comes to major gifts, you're not even at the table. You haven't paid your ante. So first, pay your ante. But you don't win the game with your ante, right? So this is your ante. Doing the basics well. Use the Stewardship Basics Scorecard and see how you're doing, how well you are at providing a minimum acceptable level of thanks and stewardship to your donors. All right. So Stewardship Basics are about making people feel safe and loved and cared for. Your donors should know that their gifts are making a difference and that you appreciate their support. Make your donors feel safe and loved and cared for, and then wowed. But you have to make them feel safe and loved and cared for first. Like, you can't make up for terrible stewardship with some Herculean act, right? You have to do the basics well first, and then you can step in and do big things. All right. I feel like I need to move on, but it's so hard for me to do this because there's so much more I could go into here. But when you think about creating your own organizational experience, how the experience your donors have with every other organization is just going to seem pale in comparison. You need to set up some systems so that the basics are done well. And then, like, the rest is just fun. All right. It's seeing a need and responding. I like to challenge fundraisers with this thought. Like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you're long gone from your organization. And there's a staff retreat, staff meeting, development meeting, whatever. And everyone's sitting around and they're telling stories. And they're like, have you ever heard what Sally, who worked here, gosh, back in the 2000s, have you ever heard the story what she did? Like, that's your goal. What can you do today that people will still be telling stories about 20 or 30 years now? All right. But The Stewardship Basics scorecard will tell you whether or not these really cool and fun and special things that you're doing for your donors are getting you ahead or just getting you back to minimum acceptable. All right. Right inside the front cover of Starbucks Green Apron book, there's this question. Why are we here? And the answer to that question is to provide an uplifting experience that enriches people's daily lives, right? And then how do we do it? In legendary ways, big and small. How do we do it? In legendary ways, big and small. All right, like if Starbucks can summon that kind of enthusiasm for selling coffee, we ought to be able to summon at least the same kind of enthusiasm for selling our organization and connecting our donors to the life-changing and world-changing work that we do. Okay, so that's the first key. Gratitude, connection, Second key. The second key is be selfish toward your goals. All right? Like that word has such negative connotation. I know that. But I want you to put a clear goal in your mind, and I want you to have razor sharp focus on that goal. Because there are 1,000 good things you could be doing. That thing your coworker wants you to help him with. That community luncheon, that event, that mixer, that donor, all good stuff. And you're going to do your share of that stuff, like you are. I'm not saying you can't help your coworker. All right? I'm not saying you can't go to that luncheon. But I need you to focus on your goals. Your brain has within it a goal-seeking mechanism that guides you, even subconsciously, toward your goals. You can accomplish almost any goal you set for yourself as long as the goal is clear and you persist long enough. It's almost automatic. So there's this quote from Thomas Carlyle that has meant a lot to me in my life. He says, "A man with a half volition goes back and forth and makes no progress on even the smoothest road, whereas a person with a full volition moves ahead steadily no matter how difficult the path." A man with a half volition goes back and forth and makes no progress on even the smoothest road, whereas a person with a full volition moves ahead steadily no matter how difficult the path. All right, so to me, someone who is selfish toward their goals is a person with a full volition. All right? You know what you want, and darn it, like this is why you woke up in the morning, right? Like these are the 5 donors I want to meet with this month, and darn it, I'm going to meet with them. All right? I have set a goal, like you say to yourself, I have set a goal to have at least 100 donor meetings this year, and come hell or high water, I am going to have 100 donor meetings this year. All right, so you love all your donors, right? I hope you do. I mean, sometimes I've worked with nonprofit leaders. It's usually not the people in the actual role of fundraiser. Often it's founder or executive director or CEO. And you get the sense that they don't like their donors. All right, like I hope that's not you. I hope you actually love your donors. And yes, like you may run into some potential donors or even some current donors at that community luncheon. And yes, meeting that one donor over here may not be a bad thing, but are these the most important actions? All right. These need to be things like the luncheons, helping the coworker, that other donor over here. These need to be things that you fit in to your schedule, that you do as you can, as there's room around your big goals. But that's not what you do. I mean, like, seriously, your organization did not hire you to go to Rotary luncheons. I mean, I really hope that's not in your job description. I want you to know who your most important donor is. Number one, who's your most important donor? In your top 3, in your top 5, in your top 10, your top 20, top 50. And I want you to spend the majority of your time focused on these people. At Major Gifts Fundraiser, we have a tool for doing this. We call it the Donor Evaluation Worksheet, and we score donors based on 3 things, all right? 1, what is the financial capacity? Like how much could they give if they were just madly in love with you? If your mission and their life mission were virtually indistinguishable, okay, financial capacity. Second, what is their cultivatable interest? So what's their interest in your organization, and what's your ability to cultivate that interest? All right, I've looked at donor lists before. I'll see a name on a list. Okay, real scenario here. I'm at the Reagan Ranch. This guy had given us a gift of $20,000. One gift, $20,000. It was a big name, all right? I know this guy's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I know he's giving big gifts to organizations with similar missions, but he's gotten a bit old, getting a bit on the old side, and he's got like 30 gatekeepers. So my ability to cultivate him is quite low, all right? So his cultivatable interest is going to score quite low. Third thing we score is philanthropic disposition. Some people are just givers, right? They give. They'll tell you how much they love giving, and they give disproportionate to their net worth. And that's why it's one of the three things I rank in the donor evaluation worksheet. So these three things together tell us how good a prospect is. So I have some tricks and shortcuts I use to look at a large list of people and score people I've never met with. How often are they giving? Do they give monthly? Not monthly, but are they giving with increased frequency? Are they jumpers, right? Like that's what I call someone who has a jump in their giving. They give 6 gifts of $100, and then suddenly, for no apparent reason, they give $1,000. That's a jumper, and I'm all over the jumpers. All right. First of all, I want to know why. Well, first of all, I want them to notice, or I want them to know that we noticed they gave more. Like, right? I mean, that says to the donor, like, my gifts matter. Like, if you gave more and no one acknowledged it, like, it must not matter, right? So I'll just say to the donor straight up, I noticed your most recent gift was the largest you've ever given to our organization. I want them to know that I noticed. So I have all these tricks and shortcuts I can use when I am looking at a big list of names of people who I've never met with before on how I rank my prospects. So I prioritize my time. Then I go and meet with them, starting at the top and working down, right? I go and meet with them, and I prove myself right or I prove myself wrong. After the meetings, I've learned a lot, and I rescore the donors based on the meeting. And obviously, donors who were willing to take a meeting with me, right, they get bumped up automatically in the area of cultivatable interest, right? Like, obviously, if someone was willing to meet with me, they have cultivatable interest. So going back to the first key and the way you've been thinking and stewarding your donors, you want to give all your donors a great giving experience. Like, they deserve that. They're giving to you a minimum acceptable level of service. And the Stewardship Basics scorecard will tell you how well you're doing at this. Okay. Then with this smaller group of people, you begin to give them an exceptional experience. Like, suddenly, getting meetings gets easier. All right. You're able to get meetings with your best prospects because you've upgraded your Stewardship Basics and are now going above and beyond with a select few. All right. Like, your top people, you should be thinking about them all the time. Like, who are the most important people in your life? Your spouse, your kids, your closest friends. Your top 1 or 2 or 3 donors, like, they're right up there. All right, like, hopefully not outranking your spouse or your kids. And you may say, well, they're my most important professional relationships. Well, like, your professional life is a big stinking part of your life. All right, if you've seen the movie Jerry Maguire, your top donor is Rod Tidwell. All right, your top 1 or 2 or 3 donors have the potential to change your life. I can't even begin to tell you what closing your first $1 million gift will do for your career. You know what it would mean to your cause, to your ability to accomplish your mission. All right, so be selfish toward your goals, focus your energy, know who your best prospects are, and focus your time on those people. That's the second key. All right, the third key is listening to gift and asking strategic questions. All right, I know everyone says they know how important it is to listen. But how does that, the fact that you theoretically know how important it is to listen, how does that affect your donor meetings? Like, how does it actually change your donor meetings? So your goal should be that in every donor meeting, your donor talks about 75% of the time, and you talk about 25% of the time. So to use a more active term, let me put it this way, because this isn't a passive word, right? Like, it's not just that the donor's talking, right? You're listening. All right, that's what you're doing. You're listening. So you have 100% of the time, and you spend, of that 100%, you spend 75% of the time listening and 25% of the time talking. So it's not just that the donor's talking and you're waiting for them to shut up so you can talk. That's not their 75%. Their 75% is you listening. You are actively listening. All right. The third key is asking strategic questions and listening. So studies show that 48 hours after a meeting, a donor will remember only 15% of what you said, but they will remember 85% of what they said. So I call this rule 85-15. 48 hours after a meeting, let me say it again, 48 hours after a meeting, your donor will only remember 15% of what you said, but they'll remember 85% of what they said. So I don't care how smart you are or how articulate you are, in 48 hours, like, they basically forgot what you said. So obviously, you've spent a great deal of time thinking about your organization, your mission, your work. All right, my guess, okay, like, there may be exceptions to this, but my guess is that you could more beautifully and accurately articulate your mission than the donor you're meeting with today. Okay, probably. Maybe exceptions, but probably, right? Doesn't matter. Because in 48 hours, they forget what you said. All right, think about this. Think about how people recount meetings to you. Like, you've heard this, right? Like, how'd your meeting go? And they'll say, like, well, I told them, and then I said, and then I told them, and then I said. Like, I've read reports of donor meetings where the only thing the development officer got in the file was stuff they told the donor. Like, excuse me. Like, how many students went through our programs last year? How many pieces we now have in our permanent collection? Like, what a waste. So the first thing I want you to do is ask questions that get the donor articulating your mission in their words. So, like, these are the types of questions you're going to be asking. Like, of all the organizations you could support, why do you support us? Or why is our organization so important to you? Or when you talk with people about our organization, what do you say? Or if you were to summarize the principles and values our organization exemplifies, what would you say they are? All right. So your donor, when they answer these questions, they're internalizing your mission. So the meeting where you ask a donor to answer these types of questions is going to have a far greater lasting impression than you telling your donors how great you are. All right. The second type of question has to do with the donor's giving. What other organizations do they support? Why do they support these organizations? Has anyone from the museum ever been to visit you? Oh, some guy 3 years ago and you can't remember his name? That tells you one thing. Like, oh, the museum's head curator comes to see you every year and they stay at your home? Right? Like, see, the answers to these questions tell you a lot. So I'm in a meeting with a donor one time. I remember the meeting well. I'm in Austin, and I'm having a first-time meeting with this donor. He's given our organization like 2 or 3 gifts of $1,000. And I get him talking about other organizations he supports. Okay? He gets talking about his alma mater, Harvard. I ask him if he stayed involved. He tells me he has an endowed chair. I say, well, that must have been a significant gift. Like, it's not even a question. I just say, well, that must have been a significant gift. And he says, it was $2.5 million. All right. This is good information to know, right? Like, if your donor's given $2.5 million to another organization, like, you want to know that. So you got to ask the right questions to get to that information. I had another donor in our first meeting, and this donor had given us a few gifts in the $100 range, and then they jumped up to $1,000. Jumper, right? So here I am meeting with this donor whose high gift to my organization is $1,000. And I get the donor talking about their support of other organizations. Comes out like they've been quite generous, 6 and 7 figure gifts to other organizations. I zero in on the one organization I can tell is most important to them. We talk about that organization for a while. And then I just ask sort of nonchalantly, what would it take for you to give that kind of gift to us? What would it take for you to give that kind of gift to us? And this was the first meeting. You know what the donor did? They took their glass of water and they said, no. You know what they did? They answered the question. It was very conversational. So over the next few years, we got increasingly bigger gifts from this donor, eventually a 7-figure gift. All right. So I have a massive list of my favorite strategic questions I like to ask donors. I've asked all of them on a very first meeting with the donor. All right. Now, there have been times I've not felt it was like that. There have been times I've not been comfortable asking some of these questions in a particular case with a particular donor until I've had several meetings. But there's not a single question on this list I haven't asked in a first meeting. As a fundraiser, you make a living by asking questions and then listening. All right, listen completely. Ernest Hemingway, he once wrote, when people talk, listen completely. Most people never listen. All right, you want to get to know your donors. You want to know about their families, their hobbies, their interests. All right, but a great fundraiser goes beyond those things. All right, you want to ask questions that reveal the heart of the donor. You want to get them articulating the mission of your organization in their words. You want to learn about the gifts they've given to other organizations and why they've given those gifts. All right, so come on, think about this for a second. What's easier? You convincing the donor to give you money to help you accomplish your mission, or you showing the donor how they can accomplish their own personal mission in life by giving a gift to your organization. All right. If you're ever going to get a gift above and beyond anything your donor has ever given before, you are far more likely to get that gift by listening to the donor and finding out what they're passionate about and what they want to accomplish. All right. So be like Larry King. All right. Like, here's a guy who made his whole career out of asking questions and listening. Think about it. Hardly anybody knows anything about Larry King. When he brought a guest on his show, the guest wasn't there to get Larry to tell his stories. Larry asked questions and then listened. He used to say, I remind myself every morning, nothing I say this day will teach me anything. So if I'm going to learn, I must do it by listening. All right. The stuff in that donor file, like that I talked about earlier, where the development officers writing what they said, I didn't learn anything. I'm going to learn by listening. And I'll tell you, this is far more interesting and more meaningful than making a pitch. How boring would that be? If you said, my goal is to have 100 donor meetings this year, and that meant that you were going to go into 100 meetings this year and make the same pitch over and over and over again. It's boring. I'll tell you the other thing that happens, though, when you ask these types of questions, when you commit to listening to gift, to asking professional fundraising questions, your more sophisticated donors, in the back of their mind, they're like, oh, I see what's going on here. Not maybe the front of their mind, but in the back of their mind, they're something clicks. They realize you are asking the same types of questions that other professional fundraisers have asked them. Hey, these are the same types of questions. This is the same type of meeting I've had with a development officer from my alma mater. And didn't I give them $50,000 last year? And it's sort of like they put you in a category in their mind. There are these nice development officers who come and meet with them and give them an update. And then there are the professional ones who are serious about their work, they're pros, and they put you want to be in that category, right? And I'm telling you, I've watched this happen. When you ask good questions, you will sense your donor rise to the occasion of the meeting. And if you just start asking good questions, if you take my list of strategic questions and decide to own 3 of those questions, if you're just like, I could ask that one and that one and that one. Like you just take 3 questions you own. You're like, these are my questions. I'm going to ask these questions. And you just commit. Like, I'm going to ask these questions in all my meetings. You'll be like, wow, I have better prospects. I have a better donor list than I used to have. But of course, it's not that you have better prospects. You have the same prospect pool you had before, right? You're just asking better questions. Okay, so that's the 3rd key. Asking questions and listening to gift. All right, now the 4th key, making the ask and closing the gift. All right, so if you give your donors a fabulous giving experience, if you rank your donors and spend a majority of the time with your best prospects, and thus give those donors an even better giving experience, and if you are committed to meeting with your donors and asking strategic questions and listening to gift, like you'll raise more money. All right. Like they'll just give you more money because you're like over time as you meet with them more often and ask them good questions about what motivates them to give, like they're going to realize that you're more important to them and they're just going to give you more money. Not even asking. All right. This results from you doing the methodical work that places your organization in a position to be the first organization a donor thinks of when he or she is ready to give a gift above and beyond anything they've ever given before. So they sell a business or they come into this place in life where giving a larger gift makes sense. So it's what they're ready to do. And because of the methodical work you've done, you're the first organization the donor thinks of. Like, and like, good for you for doing that work. Like, seriously, that's awesome. But still, that's what I'd call a transactional gift. The donor is ready to give, and you're there and ready to receive the gift. Let's talk about transformational gifts. All right, that's what I want you asking for and closing. So when I asked my wife to marry me, next morning I went into the office and I sent one of those like all staff emails sharing the news. And my boss emailed me back. I'll never forget. So I send the all staff email. My boss emails me back. That's a big ask. That's a big ask. And it was a big ask, all right? But I was confident I was going to get a yes. I'd made my moves, asked my strategic questions. I'd gotten to go ahead from the natural partners and the primary player, right? So natural partners, that'd be friends, mutual friends. They're on board with this plan. The primary players, our parents, they're on board with this, all right? For months, I've been making my moves, asking strategic questions. We talked about a life and a future together. And now the time has come for me to make an ask. But like, it wasn't just like throwing it out there. It wasn't like a suggestive ask, right? I didn't ask until I knew I was going to get a yes. All right, but let's say on that September 9th, all those years ago, I did not ask my wife to marry me. Let's say another month goes by and I don't ask. And then a few months go by, and then 6 months go by, or a year. Like at some point she loses interest, right? Like at some point she says, this relationship is not going where I thought it was going. Like at some point, it's like I lose her heart to another. Like another suitor swoops in, steals her heart, and they're married, right? So if on our 2nd or 3rd date, if I'd ask her to marry me before effectively making my moves and asking strategic questions, like maybe I derail the whole relationship. Like maybe she thinks I'm crazy or desperate. Haven't really thought this whole thing through, right? Like, but organizations do the same things to donors all the time. It's like the donor, it's like they're asking the donor to marry them on their 1st or 2nd date. Like the donor isn't ready yet. The organization seems desperate, right? And you've seen this before, right? Like maybe you've done this before. All right. The other also happens, right? Like this couple is dating for a long time, maybe years, right? And then all of a sudden They separate, and like 6 months later, the girl is married to some other guy. Like you've seen this before, right? Long-term relationship, breakup, and like a couple months later, they're married to someone else. Or the same thing happens with organizations. You make your moves, you ask your strategic questions, the relationship builds, and like there's a natural place for that relationship to go. So after courting my wife for an appropriate amount of time, there was a natural time to ask her to marry me. So after courting your donor for an appropriate amount of time, there's a natural time to ask for the gift. And if you don't ask for the gift, at some point, the donor's like, this relationship isn't going where I thought it was going, right? Like, see, your donor wants to give. They want to be all wrapped up in life-changing, world-changing, soul-saving work. And if you never give them that opportunity, if you never make the ask, at some point they lose interest. At some point, another organization swoops in and steals their heart. So when I asked my wife to marry me, I knew I was going to get a yes. I knew it. I was absolutely certain. There's no doubt in my mind, right? So when I ask a donor for a gift, like I believe I'm going to get it, right? Like if you see me and they're like, Clark, what are you doing today? Well, actually, I have a big ask. You think you're going to get the gift? Yeah. I wouldn't be asking if I didn't think I was going to not get, if I thought I was going to not get it. All right. So when I ask a donor for a gift, I believe I'm going to get it. So when I asked my wife to marry me, I believed I was going to get a yes, but I was still nervous. Still a big ask. So I'm nervous when I go ask a donor for a gift. And I've asked for lots of gifts. But for me, an ask isn't just throwing something out there. Right? There's a build-up, a progression, an appropriate time to ask. All right. It's not ready, aim, but it's also not ready, fire, right? Ideally, it's ready, aim, fire. So when I asked my wife to marry me that day, she knew the ask was coming. She did. I set the stage, put together an epic day. It was amazing, if I may say so myself. Like, going back to that day, if I hadn't asked on that day, she would have gone home that night and thought, that was weird. Like, I really thought he was going to ask. So when the time comes for me to ask for a gift, I want the donor to know I'm coming to ask for a gift. I don't want them to be blindsided. I don't want them caught off guard. All right. I have this thing I like to do when I'm about to make an ask. There are other things that may be happening on the periphery. But one thing I love to do is have the president or board chair or some other VIP make a call to the donor a few hours before I'm scheduled to arrive. So on the call, I'll have the president say something like this. I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with Clark today. This is an important meeting for us as we work to accomplish our mission, and I appreciate you giving careful consideration to what Clark is going to be sharing with you today. So that'll get your donor's attention, right? I once had a donor tell me, like, I'd made the ask, we'd had back and forth, a couple of months past to close the gift, right? After all of that transpires, the donor goes back and the donor tells me about this conversation. He's like, yeah, the day that you came to ask me for that gift, got a call from the president. And he recounts this call that I knew had happened, right? And he told me that on that day, he hung up the phone and he looked at his wife and he said, honey, Clark's coming to ask for a lot of money. He's not coming to ask for $50,000 or $100,000. He's coming to ask for a lot of money. And when I got there and I knocked on the door, they didn't like dive behind the couch and pretend they weren't there. No, they welcomed me into their home. Okay. So much more we could go into on asking, but got to keep moving, set the stage, let the relationship naturally build, and then at the appropriate time you ask. But then a lot of people will say this, all you can do. We'll say, well, we asked, we put it out there. What more can we do? Well, you can do more. After you ask, you close. Of course, there are objections, but we often think about objections the wrong way. I think objections come up after we make the ask. But if you are listening, you should be dealing with objections before the ask, right? That doesn't mean they won't come back up after the ask, but you'll already know what they are, and you'll have talked about them before with your donor, and you'll be ready to deal with them again. All right, so then I have 4 closing questions. Okay, this is how I close a gift. My 4 closing questions: is it the cause? Is it the project? Is it the amount? Is it the timing? All right, so I have an intensive training and coaching program for fundraisers, and we have a whole module in that program on asking and closing. So it's hard for me to do these 4 questions justice in this short training, but in short, here's what you're doing. Is it the cause? All right, this goes back to mission. And obviously, you would not be in the room asking for a major gift, maybe 10 to 25 times the donor's previous level of giving, if you weren't darn sure that your donor was totally on board with your mission. The reason I asked this question here is like just to get some good vibes back in the room. Like, man, I just asked for a big gift. There's some tension in the air. And asking this question and getting the donor talking affirmatively about our mission just sort of cuts through the tension and gets everyone happy again. All right. So the second question, is it the project? So I've asked the donor for a big gift to fund a specific project within our organization. And my question is, did I get it right? All right. Maybe I asked for a gift toward a building project. I want to confirm I asked for the right project. So maybe the donor tells me the building project is okay, but what they're really into is scholarships or tuition assistance. All right. Anyway, with this question, I am trying to confirm I asked for the right project, or at worst, at least know what I should have asked for if I get this question wrong. All right. So the third question, is it the amount? Is it the amount? When I get to this point in the closing questions, I usually just say, and I thought to a project like this, I thought you'd want to give $50,000 or whatever the amount is. And I thought to a project like this, I thought you'd want to give $50,000. All right. And then finally, the fourth question relates to timing. When I get to this question, I say something like, is there anything going on in your life right now that I don't know about that would prevent you from making this gift? All right. So sometimes at this point, we get into how the gift would be made. Maybe the donor needs 2 years to do it. Maybe they want to give part of it personally and part of it through a business, or they want to give appreciated stock, or they tell me something going on in their business that may prevent them from making the gift right now, but maybe 6 months from now would be okay. All right. So those are the 4 closing questions. Is it the cause? Is it the project? Is it the amount? Is it the timing? Again, I go into much greater detail on these in my module on asking and closing. But if you'll just do this, if you'll just commit to this idea of courtship and this idea that there's a natural progression to these relationships and a natural time to ask for a gift, and then after you make the ask, commit to walking through these 4 closing questions, like how do you do that? You'll see a great deal of improvement in how you ask for and then close gifts. So, and again, I hate when asks are left hanging out there. You want to ask, negotiate, and close and move on. All right. So hopefully you asked for the right amount. You have a $5,000 donor. You ask them for $25,000 and they give $25,000. Like, congratulations, you closed the gift you asked for, right? But maybe in this case you realize you're not going to get the $25,000 and the donor gives $10,000. Okay, great. Celebrate it. Give the donor a great giving experience. But I'd rather close a smaller amount and begin the process of giving the donor a great giving experience than like forever have this ask just sort of hanging out there and not settled. Okay? So now, are you ready for this? We're on to the 5th key. And the 5th key is mental mastery. It's discipline. It's methodically planning your way to success. All right? Because here's the thing. With the 2nd key, you're going to start focusing on your best people, your number 1 donor, your top 3, top 5, top 10. All right? And you're going to see yourself moving towards major gifts with these people. You haven't gotten the gifts yet, but it's inevitable. It's just a matter of time. All right? And as you cultivate these really important donors, like, here's what's going to happen. You're going to say, like, man, I'm working on $10,000 gifts or $100,000 gifts or $1 million gifts from these people. Why am I wasting my time with this small stuff over here? why am I still meeting with these low dollar donors? And why am I still having these sort of prospecting meetings when I'm working on big gifts over here? Right. Well, here's the thing. You're eventually going to ask that donor you're cultivating now for that big gift, and they're going to give it. But you can't ask them for another gift next month. All right. That's why I say the second key, being selfish towards your goals, it eventually stops working if you don't use it along with this key. So mental mastery is having the discipline to continue to have discovery meetings with new donors, even while you are cultivating a small group of people toward major gifts. You're lining up your future major gift prospects and your future major donors. You're keeping a healthy donor pipeline. So a healthy donor pipeline, it's a beautiful thing. So I classify every donor meeting in one of four categories: discovery, cultivation, solicitation, stewardship. And you want to constantly be having all four types of meetings. So that's the sign of a healthy donor pipeline. And if you have a healthy donor pipeline, you're going to have sustained success, not be a rocket that burns out. Okay. So let me describe how a healthy donor pipeline plays out over time. So I go to San Diego this month and I have 5 discovery meetings. Next quarter, when I go back to San Diego, I meet with 3 of those donors again. One of the donors I met with, I determined is not a qualified prospect. One was out of town, but I meet with 3 of them again. But now those aren't discovery meetings on my next trip, right? Now they're cultivation meetings. I also pick up 3 new donors to meet with. So on my second trip to San Diego, I now have 6 meetings, all right? 3 of which are cultivation and 3 new ones that are discovery. On my next trip to San Diego, the following quarter, I go through my list, and I've now met with a total of 8 unique donors, 3 of which I've already had 2 meetings. One of those 3 is now in the solicitation. The others are in cultivation. Oh, and now on this third trip to San Diego, I've picked up 2 new discovery meetings. All right, so next trip to San Diego, maybe I'm closing a gift. I'm moving a donor on to stewardship. And of course, I'm adding some new discovery meetings. And all those others I met with before, they're now in cultivation and solicitation. So I actually tell development officers who travel and cover big regions of territory, the first time you go to a new city, that will be the worst trip you ever take there. Every trip will get better in terms of the quality of the meetings and the number of donors that you're able to meet with when you go to that city. So the 5th key of mental mastery is about continuing to do the basics well, of never assuming that your best prospects are sold or locked in, all right? Like that can happen. You assume your best prospects, the ones you've known and worked with the longest, that you don't need to keep bringing magic, all right? But mental mastery is about doing the basics well, keeping your pipeline full, and then not forgetting to sell the magic to where you started on the second key, right? So back to the Starbucks experience. A few years back, Starbucks as a company was really struggling. Howard Schultz, the founder, came back in, and there was an email he wrote that was leaked to the public. And in it, he writes, over the past 10 years, in order to achieve the growth, development, and scale necessary, we had to make a series of decisions that, in retrospect, have led to a watering down of the Starbucks experience. The key to mental mastery is having the willingness to continually bring yourself back to this question of how you might be watering down your organizational experience. All right. So don't wow people on occasion. Do it consistently over time. I like to say many little wows make big wow. All right. So John Nordstrom, the founder of, you guessed it, Nordstrom, used to say there's a lot to the way you unpackage and present a shoe. It's these tiny details that add up and contribute to the overall experience your donors have with your organization. Those little details are your ante. It's what allows you to be in the game. But you haven't won anything yet. You have to use all 5 keys. They are the keys to unlocking success in major gifts. What an opportunity you have. What a high calling. You have an opportunity to connect your donors with something bigger than themselves. Like my friend Jake said, giving us a spiritual experience. You're facilitating that. And the funds you raise make possible all this life-changing and world-changing work. So at Major Gifts Fundraiser, we're committed to helping you raise more money than ever before by developing deeper and more meaningful relationships with your donors than you ever thought possible. There's no better way to raise money. There's no way out there that will get your donors giving at their maximum level and get you raising money at your maximum potential like our program. There's no tricks about it. It starts with deeper and more meaningful relationships with your donors. So we offer a variety of training programs and materials for fundraisers who aspire to be the best in their field. Our clients are committed to excellence. They respect craft. And by utilizing the tools and techniques that we teach and working from the premise that we teach, which is that our donors are friends and trusted advisors, not merely wallets with people attached. Working from that premise, our clients have the joy and satisfaction of knowing that they're using the same tools and techniques used by the very best people in this field. So we are here to help you raise more money. I want you to rock this. I want you to stop worrying about how you're going to raise your budget and start dreaming about what you're going to do with the surpluses. What could you do? What could you accomplish if money weren't an obstacle? Because I'm telling you, money is not the obstacle. Like, there's so much money out there. It's constantly chasing bad ideas. So the stakes are too high, your work too important for you to roll the dice again on how to manage your major donor relationships. So save time and hassle and eliminate the risk of going it alone. So there are a few next steps you could take to move to the next level with your fundraising efforts and begin developing the kind of donor relationships that will be deeper and more meaningful and more profitable than you ever imagined. So with this program, you received a special offer for a development assessment with me. Okay, so you're listening to this training and you're like, yes, like I want that. Like that's the kind of work I want to do with my donors. I want that kind of relationship. Like you want to do this. You want to. Still, you feel like you're missing something. So like this happens all the time, right? Like it happens to me. I'm having trouble with something and feel like I'm doing everything right, but it's still not working. And then I have lunch with a friend and tell them my problem. And they're like, Clark, can't you see it? Like, here's your problem. Here's what you need to do. And I'm like, wow, like that was obvious. How did I not see that? Well, we can't see it, right? It takes another set of eyes, fresh perspective, trusted advisor. So I want to be that set of eyes for you. So right now, I'm presenting you with a special offer on a development consultation with me. All right. So this is you and me spending a few hours together. I'm going to spend 1 hour with you on the phone or on a video conference. And this is you and me, us working together. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. So you're going to tell me about your situation, your donors, where you're struggling, what questions you have. We're going to talk about your specifics. Then I'm going to go and prepare a report for you. It's a development assessment report. I'll tell you what I think you are doing well and tell you what your next steps are. I'm going to be that friend who can say, hey, here's what you're missing. All right, so this report will be something you can give to your boss or your board, something you can use to convince them to come with you on this journey, to support you, to give you the tools and resources that you need, and for them to have the confidence that you've got this, that you are actively working to identify what needs to happen to move your organization forward and creating an actionable plan. So we have a special offer on these development assessments for people like you who've gone through this program. All of the details are in the email you received from us when you got this program. But if you can't find the email, you're not going to miss out on the offer because you can't find an email. So if that's you, just email me at clark@majorgiftsfundraiser.com. That's clark@majorgiftsfundraiser.com. So just to recap, we're talking about a development assessment consultation with me. That's a 1-hour call or video conference with you. Then I'm going to prepare a written report for you. And then we're going to schedule another call for us to spend another hour together to go over that report. All right. But then, like, you're going to know where you need improvement based upon that report, but then what? So we're not going to leave you hanging. We're going to give you one of those modules from my very intensive, very robust training and coaching program. All right. These modules are amazing. So when I talk with you and do your assessment, the area I think you need to tackle next, I am going to give you a whole module on that area from my intensive training and coaching program. So you know what DIY is, right? Do it yourself. You may know what DFY is. That's done for you. And that's what most consultants do. But when they leave, you're stuck again, right? So this is a DWY program, a done with you program. We teach you how to do it so that you can do it without us. All right. So each module comes with an hour to 2 hours of video content, and in at least one case, quite a bit more. Each module comes with an hour to 2 hours of video content. And just like this program, we make the video training available on MP3 so you can listen on the go. It comes with specific action steps for you to take and then challenge questions to relate the content to your situation. There's a whole bunch of supplemental materials and additional resources. You can also upgrade to have coaching sessions with me one-on-one as you go through the program. So again, this is not a theoretical thing. This is not you listening to me and taking notes or reading something and highlighting a few ideas, all right? We're actually going to be doing this stuff when we go through the modules. We're going to be making moves on your donors, calling your donors, actually getting meetings. And then once you go through the module, we'll have another call together just to be sure you have this stuff down. So if this is of interest to you, email me. Just to recap, you get all this development assessment and a module for my intensive training and coaching program with this next offer. The details are in your email, but remember, you're not going to miss out if you can't find an old email. All right, so just shoot me a line. I gave you my email earlier. You heard it earlier, but here it is again, just in case. Are you ready? Just in case. Clark@majorgiftsfundraiser.com. That's Clark@majorgiftsfundraiser.com. All right, thanks for participating in this training program. Just the fact that you're here is a good sign. You want to do well, right? Like, you want to rock this. You want to be successful. And we're honored to partner with you in helping you achieve your mission. Thank you.